Once called the Godfather of Hispanic Marketing, Richard Montañez is the creator of Frito Lay's Flamin Hot line of products, which have become a billion-dollar business and a cultural phenomenon. Richard started his career at Frito Lay as a janitor in 1976 and took very seriously PepsiCo CEO Roger Enrico's edict to act like an owner. He received several awards in recognition of his visionary leadership, ability to innovate, and his commitment to diversity during his 42-year career. And Richard is the only four-time recipient of PepsiCo's Chairman's Award, the highest honor given to employees based on performance and work ethic. Richard held various senior roles at PepsiCo and its Frito Lay divisions and has been named one of the most influential Latinos in corporate America. He ultimately led multicultural sales and marketing as vice president across Pepsi North American divisions before retiring from PepsiCo in 2020. Today, Richard serves on several boards and is a sought-after motivational speaker, speaking to companies like Target and Walmart, as well as universities such as USC, Notre Dame, and Harvard. Richard has been featured in numerous TV and print outlets, including Good Morning America, The Washington Post, Vanity Fair, Fortune, and Newsweek. He is the author of 2 books, and his story is now the subject of a soon-to-be-released biopic from Fox Searchlight Films. This episode is sponsored, of course, by Flamin Hot Cheetos. Spice up your life with Flamin Hot Cheetos. Welcome, Richard, and thanks for joining us on Life Excellence.
My pleasure. Thank you for that introduction, man. Can I get a copy of it?
Absolutely. We'll send it to you right after the show. Richard, let's talk about the exciting news. Your life story is being told in a movie being released on June 9th. The movie is Flamin Hot, the story behind the legend of America's favorite snack. Eva Longoria is the film's director, and Flamin Hot is the first feature film to simultaneously stream on both Hulu and Disney+. How did it feel as you sat recently in the Paramount Theater in Austin, Texas, watching the premiere of your life story at the South by Southwest Film Festival?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was such an incredible feeling for both me and my wife. And after, seeing the whole thing without, because we've seen it before, but we were concentrating on edits. And this time it was let's just relax and enjoy it. And exactly what we did. So it was overwhelming, inspiring to myself. And it just hit me. And I realized that all the pain that I endured had a purpose. And the movie showed that. Because people hear our stories, Brian, but they don't really know the pain that we went through to get to somewhere. Every story, has pain in it. And mine and it just hit me. It made it more accepting, put it that way. It's like I can understand it now. Like, man, why do I have to live this life? Why couldn't I had an easy life? There wouldn't have been no movie. So it was an overwhelming experience for both of us.
I bet it was. And I look forward to sharing your story with our listeners and viewers. And Eva Longoria directing the movie, how did she become involved with the film?
Well, I'm gonna take you back to the beginning, okay? So that way you have some of the insights that people don't know. Because I haven't told that story. But I wrote my first book called The Boy, Burrito and a Cookie. And it was kind of a little bit my life story, not too much, but a lot of leadership principles that I have learned over the course of my life, from the streets and from corporate America and from the plant that I started at. And another reason I wrote the book is I wanted my children to have some type of a history. See, I never wrote that book for money or fame. That was the furthest thing from my mind. I just I want my children to see some of the things that I'm going to forget someday, or maybe when I'm gone. But I also did it for this reason: is I know that if I wrote a book, maybe they'll write 2 books. You want to be that pillar in your family. If you're going to mentor anybody, mentor your family. So I wrote the book, and it did very well. And it was torn apart by the English literature critics. There was some misspelled words, and people were saying, "Who do you think you are? You can't spell." And I tell people, "Well, you know what? I'm not trying to win a spelling contest. And if you concentrate more on the spelling versus the actual message, then it wasn't for you." But I started to get feedback and letters from people who it was crazy, Brian. College professors were using it in their universities. Oh, I apologize for that. In their universities, and moms were sending to me letters to me saying that they bought the book and they sent it to their sons in prison to give them some hope. And I was like, wow, this book, even though it's criticized for the grammar, is changing lives. And the next thing you know, Hollywood gets a hold of it, and there's a bidding war for the rights to it. And I'm just blown away. What a bidding war for my little book, you know. So we got calls from Paramount, MGM, Lionsgate, CBS. Every company in Hollywood was calling us. And I really didn't know how to handle that. But I had a friend who had a mutual friend who was a producer. Devon Franklin was a producer. And my friend was Sam Rodriguez. So he introduced us together. And Devon had never heard about me. But he started to, Google me. He was just impressed that, I had, there was millions of people looking at my stuff. And so he kind of became, not my agent, but kind of my mentor in the process. So we got a screenwriter, put, 3 pages together, and we took it to Hollywood. We met with every company you can think of with the leadership. That's the incredible part, is that they wanted to meet me and my wife. They wanted to see if we really existed. So that was very, very flattering, and I won't tell you his names. I don't want to embarrass him, but there was a CEO that was in one of the early meetings, and he said, I'm never impressed with, I know every actor you can think of, and I've never asked for an autograph, but he goes, "Can I have your autograph on a bag of Cheetos?" And I was like blown away, like, how can this be happening? So anyways, we came down to, we had the offers, and Netflix offered the most money, but they had some, things in there that I just couldn't commit to, and so I decided to go with Fox Searchlight. And the reason I went with Fox Searchlight was because they gave me more input, and they were really big on diversity. And this whole thing was, what I'd like people to know, that this was never about making money or fame. There's other ways to make money. This wasn't, so it's not something that me and my wife were like eager to do. We were like debating, should we do, you don't want to throw your whole life out in front of everybody to see. But we, people said it's going to inspire people. And I went back to my book and, the notes and, different schools. And I said, okay, we'll do it. And, we didn't take the money. We went with Fox Searchlight because it gave us more input in their diversity process. And one of speculations that we needed to have a Latina director. Now, there's very few of them out there, but that was my, my way of giving back to my community, because you've heard me say this before, that the Latina is a big part of my success, going from my grandma, my mom, and my wife. So, of course, I had to, show my support and appreciation of women in general. So, I just never knew it was going to be Eva. So, there was, the word went out. We were looking for directors. And then my producer called me up and he said, Eva wants to do this. I said, what? Eva Longoria? He said, yeah. So he goes, come on in. She's going to give a presentation. You know what? She gave me and my wife and everybody that was in the room this presentation that I got to say is one of the best presentations I ever seen in corporate America. Now, I'm from corporate America, so I've had some big meetings with Walmart, Target, 7-Eleven, you name it. I know what it is to be top to top. And when she did that, I go, man, she's an actress and she's presenting like this. So she just blew everybody away. I've always said, you got to put that presentation in a museum on how to sell yourself. And it was just, everybody just loved it and fell in love with her. So like, let's do it. And we knew that we were taking a chance. This was her first movie. And there was some people saying, well, I don't know about that, but I was like, man, it's her. So she ran with it. She brought in another writer to help make it more my style, our style, and then she went to work. The casting was, in my opinion, perfect. The person that plays me, I mean, the guy looks like me, acts like me. Person that plays my wife, she's strong. I needed a strong, female, because my wife is she's a very strong woman. No question about it. So they did all that, and then Eva went to work, and we went and saw her in action. And Brian, she is, I don't know how to say it, man, but she's a boss lady. She knows how to get people to do things in an inspirational way.
She's the real deal, isn't she?
Yeah, I never saw her crack a whip, but I saw her move, and that's my style. I've never cracked a whip in my life. I don't believe in that, and she just kind of just led like that, and but her reputation also was a big support for the movie. People, if you meet her, I guarantee you will fall in love with her as a person. She's just somebody that, she came to our house, she met my children, my grandchildren, she, whatever we wanted. My grandkids have a cameo in the movie. And one of the things my wife told Eva, she said, hey, the one thing, all I want is I want my grandkids. And she said, no problem. And she made that happen, and you'll never know they're my grandkids, but, it's pretty cool to have them in there. So she's been nothing short of a blessing. She's just a tremendous person. And, she's somebody that I will be friends with for the rest of my life. She's family now.
Well, I hope I get a chance to meet her one day, and I'm certainly going to have a chance very soon to see the movie, so I'm looking forward to that. Richard, let's back up all the way to the beginning and start from, you grew up in Guasti, California, a town built in the middle of a sprawling vineyard. Your parents and grandparents and others in your family were migrant farm workers. They picked grapes, and you probably picked grapes too growing up. And I know you left school after the 6th grade. You probably didn't know how to read or write very well, and probably didn't have a strong grasp of the English language either. Spanish obviously was your primary language. Now, I'm not judging, but that sounds like a very difficult upbringing. What was it like for you growing up?
Well, it's interesting because it was difficult because, I mean, it's still difficult, for people of color today. But, my life specifically, or my generation, there were none of those laws that are in place today to protect you. So you have to keep that in mind. It was just a different time. The 60s, and the early 70s was so different because they lacked those laws that would protect people. I'm talking strictly diversity, and so it's very it was different, and one of the reasons that I just couldn't handle school was the language barrier. It wasn't so much that I wasn't an intelligent person, but again, back into the 60s, because of the language barrier, they automatically said that your intelligence level was low. That's how you looked at it. And I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born here, but I know the life of an immigrant. I was treated as an immigrant. And what does that mean? Well, I was treated as a second-class citizen. I didn't want to go to schools because you never got the appreciation from teachers, and especially too in my days, my generation. I mean, people still talk about it today, but I lived it. The darker the skin, the more that you have to endure. I don't know why that is. I'm not even trying to explain, but I'm a dark Mexican. So just going and shopping was, salesperson would follow you around, and where I grew up, you had to stay on your side of town, but all the stores were on the town that I ended up growing up into, it was typical mainstream, had the, main street that all the shops were on, before the big malls. And, we'd venture off to the other side. It was always a danger, So that's one of the reasons I stopped going to school. Now, I remember too, one of the reasons I stopped going to school because I just wasn't getting anything out of it. Now, the thing that I don't like to talk about, that another reason we didn't want to do the movie, because it's going to show my early days, and there's some things that I'm not proud of that I did, that nobody knows about, and some people are going to get shocked. But I got into a lot of trouble. I'm talking about being in jail and juvenile hall and stuff like that, and I'm not proud about it. And that's why I never talked about it, because I never wanted to glorify that part of my life. Some people do, but no, I didn't want, when I finally, got my life together. So, when I say that I stopped studying in the 6th grade, this is what I mean is that I stopped studying in the 6th grade. That was it. Now, will you find my name in somewhere in the 7th and 8th grade and maybe the 9th grade? Yeah, absolutely. And here's why. Because I was in a youth center, a juvenile hall type of center as a teenager, and you had to go to school. And then when they let me out, we had, I don't know if you ever remember truant officers. They were your probation officers. So I had probation officer. So I still didn't go to school, Brian. I still wouldn't go to school. So my probation officer would say, you know what, I'm picking you up, and they would literally take you to school and sign you up. Then I would just leave. I never went back to school. So that's kind of the reason that if you check the history, you would look, hey, well, your name shows up in the 7th grade, but you said 6th. And I said, well, I'm not lying. I stopped studying. I stopped going to school in the 6th grade, but in the other years, it was forced upon me because that was the system, probation. I was literally, until I turned 18, I was literally a ward of the court.
I've heard you say that even though you don't have a formal education past the 6th grade or 7th, 8th, 9th grade, you didn't graduate from high school, let alone college, but you do have a PhD. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was actually, it just came to me in the spur of the moment. Many years ago, I was teaching an MBA class at a very prestigious school in California. And I won't give you their name because I don't think they want anybody to know that one of their teachers didn't have a high school diploma. But one of the students kind of was challenging me. That's why I always say that I don't care what room you're in, there's always somebody in the room that's going to try to steal your destiny. Your job is to be ready not to allow it to happen. So sure enough, a person asked me, Mr. Montañez, all my professors have PhDs, knowing well that I didn't have one. And I said, well, I have a PhD. I've been poor, hungry, and determined. And I realized that, you know what, I do have a PhD because, there was so much knowledge that I gained from being poor, so much knowledge that I gained from being determined, and tremendous amount of knowledge that I gained from being hungry. So I always looked at it that, I'm really well educated. I'm just not educated the same way as everyone else. I read a book a week. I will never say to someone not to seek an education or, higher education. I've helped support, millions of dollars to scholarships across the country, so it's really big on me. That's why I always tell, sometimes it's a dilemma for me. Like I said, I've spoken at Harvard, Notre Dame, some of the top universities in the country, and I'll always hear this, never fails, Mr. Montañez, well, why should I get an education? You don't have one. And I always say, wait, time out, hang on, wait a minute, let's back up there. Look how far I got without an education. Just imagine how far you can get with one. And so that's why, I'm always an advocate of, if you can get the education, go get it. But if you can't, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. you know?
Well, you've definitely been educated through your experience. And I always say we're the collective sum of our total experience, whatever that experience is. And your
Absolutely.
experience looks a lot different than most people's experiences in this country, but it's still education. And arguably, you've learned more from that kind of education than a lot of people learn from formal education. Richard, let's fast forward a few years in your story. So I know you met your wife, Judy. You mentioned her, and you two met as young teenagers. And you were married and had your first son, I think, while you were still teenagers. And then at the age of 19, you made a career move that would change the course of your life. How did the opportunity to work for Frito Lay present itself?
Well, we were, we've known each other since we were kids. And the truth is, I love at first sight for me. I don't know about her, but for me it was, I said, I'm going to marry this girl. And yeah, we had my first son when we were 17. So, we were just still kids ourselves. And, I had worked at a chicken ranch. I was a gardener, worked at a car wash. So, um, I looked at working at Frito Lay as my big break. And it came by my neighbor telling me they were hiring. I said, well, you know what? Let me just go take a shot at it. And Judy filled out the application for me, and I took it. And by God's grace, I got hired. And that's kind of where my career started. And I remember they said you're going to start as the janitor, and I started in the graveyard shift, 11 to 7 in the morning. And I wanted to tell my grandfather and my dad that I got the job. So I went to. It's kind of interesting. Where the plant is, that used to be part of Guasti. So in that area, what people don't know the history of Guasti, the area that I grew up, it was actually at one time, it was the biggest wine producing area in the country.
Mm.
It was bigger than Napa Valley. It was, hundreds and hundreds of square miles. They used to call it the biggest vineyard in the world. And it was founded by Italians that came over from Italy. So all that land there was nothing but vineyards, just miles and miles, 100 miles, and vineyards. So it was ironic that the plant was based right there. So it wasn't too far, for me to go to tell my father and grandfather. And I remember my grandfather. He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to mop the floors. I'm going to mop." And he looked at me and was as serious as it can be. He just said, "Hey, when you mop that floor, you make sure that it shines. When people see it, they know that a Montañez mopped it." And you know that I believe that that's the reason I've been successful my whole life. Is no matter what I do, it isn't about compensation. It's about my last name. It's about my legacy, my heritage, and whatever I do, I'm going to make it shine. And I took that on, and you know what? It made a difference. I saw that I had an influence. Now, when you think about influence, everybody wants to be an influencer. Everybody wants to influence the world. Not so for me. I'm not trying to influence everyone, only the right ones. And what does that mean? Well, I say when it's the right one, you're an influence to them and they're an influence to you. You help each other. You know, if you're not influencing someone, move on. I learned that early in my career that, if you didn't get it, I don't have time to explain it to you. There's somebody out there that that's why I say it's the right ones. And a good example is when I called, I'm getting ahead, but, we can back up. When I did call the CEO for my idea, I influenced his secretary, who's still my friend today, and she put the call through. But before she put the call through, I don't know what she said, because when Mr. Enrico got on the phone, he was so excited. So that's what I say. I'm not trying to influence everyone, only the right ones. She was the right ones because she took the call and she got him excited. So
So it's influencing the right people, and also a little bit of luck, right? The fact that it was Patty who answered the phone rather than somebody else may have changed the course of history, may have changed the
Absolutely.
course of your life for sure.
Absolutely. I didn't know how corporate America works, so I didn't know who was going to. I just, saw her name, said executive assistant, and dialed the number.
And so I find that fascinating. You're the janitor. Life was going pretty well at Frito Lay. I know you got involved with operations and efficiency of machine operations and that sort of thing. But for you to call the CEO of the company, Richard, you were the janitor. You weren't in product development. You weren't in R&D at the time. You weren't in marketing. You were arguably as far away from an idea person as you could be in your position with Frito Lay. And yet that's exactly what you were. You were an idea person. You submitted ideas, like I said, on making the equipment run more efficiently. You came up with ways to eliminate waste. And eventually you developed a product idea that would revolutionize the snack business. I find that fascinating, and I'm trying to understand your psyche as you were sharing your ideas. Looking back, and as I was reading your book and preparing for this show, I just wondered, were you naive or courageous or rebellious? I know you grew up maybe with a little bit of a rebellion in you, but how would you characterize your behavior? What caused you to do something that most people in your position would never even think of doing, and yet for you just sort of matter-of-factly picked up the phone and called the CEO, Roger Enrico?
Well, I think a lot of it was not knowing the rules, being ignorant to how corporate America works. Had I known, I don't know if I would have done that, but I really didn't know any better. But I know that watching my father was a brilliant man, self-educated, but there wasn't anything he couldn't do. I mean, if you wanted a house, he could build you a house. If you wanted a hot rod, he could build you a hot rod. I grew up changing transmissions at the age of 12 because, my dad was a master mechanic, but he didn't go very far. He died broke, but it wasn't because he wasn't creative. He was a brilliant man. And I saw that I realized that I had his same creativity, but it was coming out in a different way. And I had a fear. I saw my dad struggle his entire life. Like I said, he died broke, and we were evicted. I saw them repossess our car several times, and we didn't have insurance as a kid and stuff like that. So it put a fear in me, and I had no other way to explain it than I was fearful, but I had something that was greater than the fear that I had, and I was hungry. What were you hungry for? I was hungry for a different life. I was hungry to, I wanted to be like the other people that were enjoying the life. I wanted a normal life, and I wasn't going to get it unless I did something that wasn't normal. I knew that much. It's like, you want a normal life, but you're not going to get it doing normal work. It's not going to happen. And I knew that. So I said, I need to do something different. Then there it was. The CEO sent out a video. He said, I'm giving you permission to act like an owner. He said, I can't fix this company. Frito Lay is going down, and I need your help. My executives can't do it. And I believed him. That's why, many times when I talk to a lot of CEOs, some of the top CEOs in the world. And I always tell them, don't tell your workforce something that you're just kidding about. Don't tell them that they are empowered if you don't really feel that they're empowered. And the last thing, don't ever tell them that you care about them when in reality you care more about your stock and the shareholders It doesn't say anywhere that you have to love your workers. You have to treat them good. But too many young CEOs make the mistake and say, well, we love our workers, yet you're taking away their benefits. It just gets you in trouble. It's inconsistent. Well, this CEO, he was the real deal. He said, you know what? The only bad thing, Brian, at the time is that a lot of his leaders didn't believe in it. A lot of his leaders couldn't understand, what is this guy doing? He's giving, he's making more work for us, and now all of a sudden, they're the important ones. So it was very humbling for the managers at the time, because here's this CEO, he's coming from Pepsi, and everybody's like, what does he know about chips? He's from Pepsi, and he's making me work more now because now, I have to help. I'm a resource now to my team. There's no more about forcing everything. So it was a whole wake-up call for them. So the interesting part is that, and I don't know if we can ever really capture that, you had this side that was empowered, and you had this side, their power was taken from them. You kind of understand what I'm saying there? It kind of like, you're the boss, but you're no longer called a boss. You're called a resource now. What is your job? To help me. Well, there was this. They were like, I can't let this go. I can't let this go. I'm in charge here. I went to college for this. Now you're telling me that I don't have it. I'm going to let this janitor, I'm going to let this machine operator. It wasn't like, hey, Richard, go do it. Yeah, we're behind you. Now some of them grasped it right away. And it was some of the younger ones grasped it right away. They were like, yeah, this is pretty cool. But some of the older ones, the ones that had the knowledge, were like, this is my knowledge. This is my knowledge. I'm not going to let this go. So it wasn't as easy as it sounds. Some people think, well, all he did was pick up the phone. No, man, when I picked up that phone and made that phone call, it took about 20 minutes for me to find out exactly what I'd done, because the president's office, the CEO's office called the president's office called the vice president office, the vice president called the director's office called the plant manager's office, and the whole conversation was the same. Who let the janitor call the CEO? Had never been done before. In all of corporate America, that's the one thing that I'm proud of, is I started to change in corporate America. It was yours truly, it was this janitor. I'm taking the credit for that. I don't have, a problem doing that, because it's true. That's why, I'm called the Godfather of Hispanic branding, because I was first. And the Godfather in the Latino community is somebody who cares about everyone else. It's not the mafia Godfather, it's the padrino, the one that takes care of everyone, and that's me. So I got chewed out. It wasn't a good thing. It wasn't like, oh, I couldn't understand, Brian. Why can't anybody see that I'm just trying to help the company? Didn't you guys see the video? You watched the same video I did. And I think that's why, Mr. Enrico, Roger, I call him Roger, but, he'll always be Mr. Enrico. That's why Roger and I became friends. Because when I told him, hey, I watched your video, he was like, you saw my video? You listened to me? And I said, yeah. And I'd always listen to him, and I listened to the leader. And people would say, well, what's your strategy, Richard? What strategy? I'm just going to follow the CEO strategy. He said, go do this. And, and he loved that. So we became friends, and little by little, we both began to, change the organization. And then they started sending me outside the organization, because other companies wanted to hear about this empowerment, and other companies were saying, well, where's my janitor? But a lot of it is, you have to have the right leadership team. It ain't going to happen. That's why I say, like, you're just going to frustrate everybody. If you tell me I'm empowered, but you're just kidding, here I am down here believing you, but you're just really, it's not going to work. Don't do it because it sounds good. Do it because you believe in it. And it's going to, and sure enough, everybody was trying to be empowered. Everybody was trying to come up with a great idea. That wasn't just me. There were other ideas. It just changed. Frito Lay became one of the best companies, in the world. Going from struggling to, recruiters will say, get me a manager from Frito Lay, because they know how to lead. So it was, that's why I said, when I saw the movie, it gave my pain a purpose. and the purpose to inspire people. But it was pretty rough in the beginning, Brian. It wasn't like well accepted. And then here's the other thing you have to think about. And again, remember, I don't know all this stuff. And if I did, maybe I would have done something different. But the main people that I offended unintentionally were all the scientists. At the time, Frito Lay has like, I don't know, 300 plus PhDs, right? Food scientists.
So, Mr. Enrico, Roger, as you call him, appears on this video and says to act like an owner. And I'm sure people took it different ways, and you sort of alluded to that, but you took that to heart. You took it very seriously and came up with all kinds of ideas in the plant. And then at one point, you came up with an idea for a product, and that product would end up revolutionizing the snack business. Tell us how you came up with the idea for Flamin Hot Cheetos, and then how you implemented that. What led up to the phone call to Mr. Enrico?
Well, knowing that the CEO had just challenged everyone to act like an owner and said these words, I give you my permission to act like an owner. And, it was already an anxious day because they had shut the plant down. And if you know anything about operation, you never shut the plant down. It runs all whatever. They shut the plant down across the globe or whatever they had to do. And they brought us all in. So it was a lot of anxiety for everyone. Like, what's going on here? They're gonna never happened before. Maybe it's gonna lay us off. And so they brought us in and put on the video, and there he was. I never, I'd seen him before, and he said, "I want you to act like an owner. I'm giving you my permission." And everybody did the typical thing, he's not talking to you, Richard. He's not talking to us. He's talking to them. He's not, oh, that's another corporate thing. But, I'm always up to a challenge. And I knew, like I said, I was hungry and I did something that I've been doing my whole life. And, I think some of your young people need to do it, is I broke ranks. I looked at my peers and I said, well, you can stay where you're at. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to act like an owner. And I came home and I told Judy, and Judy's way ahead of the game. I said, hey, Judy, the CEO said, act like an owner. And she said, well, act like an owner. I didn't really know what that meant. So let me do some research. So I found a salesman, because the sales office was right next to the plant. So I just walked in there and I found a salesman. I said, hey, can I ride with you? I just want you to teach me the business, and I'll load the truck. I'll do all your work. You don't have to pay me. I'll do it for free. That guy looked at me like, man, free labor? You can come on your vacation if you want. And he's like, yeah, sure. Meet me at 5 a.m. I said, okay. So on my day off, I met him at 5 a.m. and the gentleman taught me how to write up an invoice, how to load the truck, and everything had a reason, load the truck this way because we're going to, maximize our space. And he taught me how to run a route. It's okay, run it this way because we're going to minimize our fuel. And then when we got to the store, he said, merchandise it like this because we're going to maximize our time. We want to get to the next store. So there I was thinking like, I want to learn my business. And after like the, I don't know, fourth, fifth stop, I saw it. And here's where I get the statement that all you need is one revelation to create a revolution. And you look at what is a revelation. Revelation is something that was always there, but it's been revealed or unveiled to you. I'm going to give you a revelation right now. This bag was always here, but I just revealed or unveiled it to you. So there we were. He was teaching me how to merchandise, and there's a system. It was like this: Lay's, Ruffles, Fritos. Lay's, Ruffles, Fritos. And then I looked, and I saw it. I saw what? A revelation that was going to create a revolution. I looked at him. He couldn't see it. You know why he couldn't see it? Because he was an expert. So I tell people, don't be such an expert that you can't see things anymore. So I saw it, and what did I see? I saw the spices. I saw people buying spices. I saw bags of spices, bags of chilies. And then I looked at our products, Lay's, Ruffles, Fritos. I'm like, maybe sour cream. What about the people that like spices? The spiciest thing we had at the time was barbecue. So I went and I didn't tell him. I just said, oh, this is my idea. So I went and I told Judy. Judy's a wonderful cook. And I said, Judy, we're going to put your salsa, your chili on a product. And she's like, she's that person that wherever I want to go, let's go, man. That's my, she's full of courage, this woman. And she said, what product? I don't know. I don't know yet. Lay's, Fritos. And then one day we went grocery shopping and there's a street vendor selling this product. Is very, very famous, but over 30 years ago, you would only find it in my Latino communities, but now it's famous at street fairs, Disneyland, Magic everywhere. And it's corn on a stick, corn on the cob, and for $1 they put butter, lemon, chili, cheese, whatever you want on it. And I bought groceries and I bought 2 of them, one for me and one for my son. And we're sitting down and we took a bite. And I took another bite and I got another revelation. What's a revelation? Something that was always there. I looked at it, I go, that looks like a Cheeto. What if I put chili on a Cheeto? And I ran inside and told Judy, that's how the corn looked. That looks like so I told Judy, hey, I got it. We're going to put your chili on a Cheeto. She said, okay, go to the plant next day and bring some Cheetos with no cheese on it. Because this is a slurry. It's not a powder. It's a slurry. And so I got some. They're yellow, right? If you look inside, it'll be yellow. And, after a few days, we were mixing it, matching, and finally got it. She took some of her work. I took some of my work. Everybody loved it. And she said, you need to call the CEO. Well, this is during when corporate America is a command and control. What is command and control? I didn't hire you to think. I hired you to do what I tell you to do. I command and I control. They hadn't heard the word empowerment yet. So we were ahead of the process. So you don't do that. Protocol is, everything. Again, I didn't know the rules. I'm just like, I'm excited. I got to go for it, If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But it's not going to, the dozen isn't going to be there because I didn't do anything. Because they didn't want to do anything. So I called up and, like I said, he picked up the phone. He goes, I'll be there in 2 weeks. Hung up the phone. 20 minutes later, I'm getting chewed out because everybody's coming. And again, now, keep in mind also during the command and control is CEOs never went to plants. CEO would never visit a plant. They would go to sales meetings, market, they'd meet with customers, but they never walk into a plant ever. So he kind of broke that, and started a new trend where CEOs went into plants, visiting plants, and so it had never been done. So everybody was worried. Every vice president that was, 1,000-mile radius was worried. Well, what the heck is he coming down to see him? And, so there was a lot. And my plant manager said, you realize what you've done? I really didn't. He said, well, you're doing a presentation. And I thought, I'm doing a presentation? I've never even done homework. So I go home and I tell Judy, and Judy sees me and she says, what's wrong? I said, I'm going to get fired. And she says, why? I said, because you told me to call the CEO. Now I'm in trouble. Typical leadership of a woman. She says, calm down. It's not that bad. We're going to go to the library and check out a book on how to develop a marketing strategy. And, there was no Google. There was none of that. We went to the library, picked out a couple of books. I literally copied a couple paragraphs from a book. I put them on my transparencies. We made 100 bags. The seal's coming in 2 weeks. So I got 2 weeks to prepare. We made a couple 100 bags, put the product in there. I'm a little bit of an artist, so I drew graphics on clear bags, and sealed it. So when you got the bag, it actually looked like it was going to the market. So I tell people when it just wasn't my idea. I didn't, write on a piece of paper here. I didn't tell somebody. I did the product. I did the presentation. I showed everybody what they were physical bags, and they were eating it. They loved it, and they came into town. Yeah, everybody was there: chief marketing officer, chief financial officer. Because remember, why were they all there? Because he'd never visited a plant. It just wasn't, the vice president of operation. That was his job. So he was worried. Well, if somebody's going to get fired, all because of me. Instead of looking at it like, wow, man, this is history. This is history. Let's celebrate. He's coming to see one of our workers. It's a team win, but they never received it like that until later. So he came in. I got up there, did my presentation. I went, bought my first tie for $3.50. My neighbor put it in a knot the night before, so that way in the morning I just kind of put it on and pulled it up. And as scared as I was and as ridiculous as I looked, I got up there and did my thing. Like I said, I'm not trying to influence everyone, only the right ones. And he was the right one because he saw it and he was like, "This is incredible. We got to do this." And the rest is history.
There's a recurring theme throughout your life and throughout your career, and it's pushback and negativity and resistance and attempts to sabotage you and to sabotage your ideas. I have to ask you about an article that I saw in doing research for the show, and I think it came out a couple years ago. It was an LA Times article disputing the validity of your claim as creator of Flamin Hot Cheetos. And I know PepsiCo came out very quickly and released a statement crediting you with the impact you had on not only the success of the Flamin' Hot brand, but other product ideas too. But Richard, that article must have felt like yet another punch to the gut. Was that just another attempt to sabotage and discredit you like you had experienced various times throughout your career?
Yeah, that was one of the big ones because it came after I retired, and it came as a complete shock. So it took me a long time to understand, what took place. I still couldn't figure out why. It could have been a simple because I know the system. When somebody asks the question, it's always well, no comment. He did work here, and it's simple as that. Move on. They don't. Companies don't sit there and open up the books about an employee. You know that. I think in some cases it's illegal. So I couldn't wait a minute, who's telling the truth and who's lying? How did this all begin? And it's just, is this a conspiracy to bring, who started? It's definitely a conspiracy, but who started the conspiracy? I don't know. And if you look at the art, well, you did see the article. It didn't talk to anybody who knew me. It didn't even talk about the foundation that I have, the thousands, hundreds of thousands of families that me and my wife have fed over the last 20 years, thousands, 50,000 brand new shoes that we give to kids that can't afford them, backpacks, school supplies, none of that stuff. It was all. And then, saying something about a $50,000 speaking fee. That's incredible. I've never been paid $50,000. I'm still waiting for that day. I'm going to start.
I was going to say you'd like to be paid that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm going to start charging that. So, and I never even heard about the other person. And I'm the type of individual, Brian, is that I'm not going to fight you, through social media and stuff like that. It's not what I do. I'm especially not going to fight a lie or give it any type of life. And, the other person, I didn't attack them, never even heard of them. It's like, what the heck, and so the system itself began to defend me. People were writing that were there. Say, I was there with Richard when he did that. The people at Cucamonga were saying, no, the retired executive, the chief financial officer, the CEO himself, said, if there was no Richard, there'd be no hot Cheetos. Roger Enrico's secretary said, I set up the meeting for, it was all confirmation, but that was pretty much left out. And then I spent 42 years there. And without trying to hurt the other person, I won't even mention the name because I don't, it's none of my business. But if that was true, the person was only there for 3 years. Think about this. Somebody with an MBA creates hot Cheetos. Oh, you're going to be president. You're going to be chief marketing officer. And I won every award after for 42 years. And I became a marketing executive, a sales executive with, two companies, the Frito side of the business, and then 20 years on the beverage side with Pepsi and Gatorade. So it was a big shock for us. And I still to this day haven't been able to figure it out. And, I just have to move on and just continue to go forward. But it did shake me up because I love my company. I love PepsiCo. I learned so much. There was, like I said before, I was their greatest ambassador. And for them to hurt me like that, I don't know if it was intentional. Was it a mistake? Because you know what? What's crazy about this is I didn't have any discussions with anybody. I didn't get a lawyer. I didn't get a publicist. I didn't get a PR. I didn't do anything. I'm just like, what can I do? You're telling me, the person that I was married to for 42 years was cheating on me? I'm not gonna. That's what it felt like. I mean, I don't know what that would feel like, but it was pretty devastating. It took me a little while, but you know what? So many people came out in my defense. Eva was one of them. My producer, Al Carey, who was a former CEO of Frito Lay, and was he was a big part of everything that had happened. And he came out and but none of that stuff was reprinted or people in this country love drama. And they'd rather see something bad than something good. And I know that because I watch people. It's been part of my journey was to understand people, and I just knew that. So I just knew better than let's just keep our mouths shut and continue to do what we do best, inspire people, and do other things. And then we got the movie coming out, and I wrote my second book, and I'm working on my third book, and I had so many offers for television show and even a Broadway plays. My speaking engagements are incredible. So just that's who I am. So I'm always ready, to take a blow.
So what's the lesson for our listeners and viewers about overcoming adversity? You've been overcoming adversity because of the color of your skin and language barriers and not being able to read and write early on, and then push back on ideas, sabotaging of ideas, and even, as we just talked about, as recently as a couple years ago. So you've been doing this your entire life, overcoming adversity after adversity after adversity, and yet I'm envisioning that cartoon where everything's sort of exploding and this character just walks through everything and emerges on the other side. What's the big lesson in that?
Well, I've always said that, your prosperity is on the other side of adversity. Mm. If there's no adversity, there's no prosperity. And I found that to be true, and I'll say this, with closing on how because people ask me that, well, my producer, when he was like, writing the note, he goes, why did you stay there so long? Why did you put up with all that? And I realized that earlier that it was never about my career. It was always about my calling. And young people say, well, I want to be like you, Mr. And I said, no. You don't want to be like me because I have a calling. There's something. If you want a career, I'm not the guy to follow. If you want a calling, I'm the guy to follow. So there's a difference. You have to understand for your own life what you're going to do. You're going to follow your career. You're going to follow your calling. I followed my calling. And as much pain as I had, Brian, I look at all the joy that I have, and we're able to feed thousands of kids, thousands of family. We put dozens and dozens of young people through college. We did, me and my wife. Because I endured what did. But it's like this, and I know you've heard this story, but I'll close with this story. Take me 2 minutes, but in that little town that I lived in, we were bused. That's when they, doing the desegregation. And I went to this, English speaking school after coming from a, bilingual school, because everybody spoke Spanish. And, my mom had made me my lunch, and we went out to the field at lunchtime, and I pulled out my lunch, and it was a burrito. And I was so embarrassed because everybody was staring. Because remember, this was 1960 something. The world hadn't seen a burrito yet, and I was embarrassed, and everybody was just staring at me like, "What is that?" And I went home and I told my mom in Spanish. I said, "Mama, make me a bologna sandwich and a cupcake because I don't want to be different. I want to be like the other kids. I want to be like Bobby. I want to be like Johnny." But my mom's what I always say. Women, leadership of women is just so incredible. My mom, she was a marketing genius. She said, "No, this is who you are." So the next day she made me 2 burritos, and she said, "Here's one for you, and here's one to share with a friend." So Wednesday was my burrito nightmare. Thursday I shared a burrito with a friend. Friday I was selling burritos for 25 cents a piece. I realized that my diversity was a benefit. And I realized at a young age, and this is why I am who I am, that as much as I wanted to fit in, I was never created to fit in. I was always created to stand out. So no matter how I try, I will never fit in. To your young listeners, I'll tell them, no matter how hard they try, they will never fit in. Why? Because they never were created to fit in. They were always created to stand out. So you fall in love with yourself and live your life. Because when you love yourself, there's a freedom to be yourself. I'm not worried about fame. I'm not worried about money because I'm who I am. Because I will never fit in. I will never be like that executive. I will never be like that marketer. I will never be like that book author because I was created to be me. And I think that's what we have to do is allow people to be themselves because there's so much creativity and so much to learn from diverse. I've always said that innovation, ingenuity can come from any place, anytime, anywhere.
That's so powerful. Richard, thank you so much for being on the show today. You're an inspiration, and your story provides hope, I think, for our listeners and viewers that their present circumstances don't have to dictate their future. I hope your movie Flamin Hot is a big hit, and best wishes for your continued success.
Thank you. Well, I'll have Steven keep you posted in case there's a premiere near you, and you can come and see it on the big screen.
I would love to do that. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks again, Richard.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into Life Excellence. Please support the show by subscribing, sharing it with others, posting about today's show with Richard Montañez on social media, and leaving a rating and review. You can also learn more about me at brianbartes.com. Until next time, dream big dreams and make each day your masterpiece.